Okay, we are now on Module 6, Lesson 3, Page 3. This is kind of a review page I made just to kind of collect everything we've learned so far into one location so that you have a page to use to study. So we're going to talk about X and Y intercepts. We're going to talk about slope. We're going to compute slope with 2 points. We're going to compute slope using a graph. We're going to learn how to solve an equation or review how to solve an equation for y, which is how we get the slope and y-intercept. And then we're going to learn how to write equations when we're given the slope and the y-intercept. So given the equation, state the x and y intercepts. So the first thing you should notice about that is they're asking for both. So I can't just solve for y and get it. This is where we made the kind of t-chart and we did each one on each side. So for the x-intercept, do you all remember that means make y 0? So we always make the other letter 0 when we're finding intercepts. And this is what I told you when we were doing this, probably one of the very most important things we learn in this class. Because in upcoming classes, it's very important when you go to make graphs that you know where the line or the parabola or the S-curve crosses the x and y axes. So to find the x-intercept, we learned a couple lessons ago, you make y 0. So I go up here and I make y 0. So negative 2x plus 0 equals 4. Negative 2x equals 4. So divide by negative 2, divide by negative 2, and we get x equals negative 2. But another really important thing that we learned about intercepts is they always need to be written as points, the final answer. And that's why I always write this step, because then I don't have to guess what the coordinates are of the point. I know what x is, I know what y is. So my x-intercept, let's move this over a little bit, is going to be x first, y second. And we know the x-intercept always has y equal to 0. So there it is. So the x-intercept is negative 2, 0. Now we're going to do the same thing to find the y-intercept, but remember on the y-intercept we make x 0, always the other letter, make 0. So this would be putting 0 here. So negative 2 times 0 plus y equals 4. Well, negative 2 times 0 is 0. So that just goes away because 0 plus y is y. Y equals 4. So that makes the y-intercept. And like I said, I'll always have both things listed. So all I have to do is put them in alphabetical order into the point. X is 0, y is 4. So now I know this line crosses the x-axis at negative 2, 0, and it crosses the y-axis at 0, 4. Now it says use the x and y intercepts. So let's go ahead and bring our points over here. So use the x and y intercepts and the slope formula. Remember that? I think we'd written it about 5 times by the time we got through that lesson to find the slope. So let's go ahead and write it again. It never hurts to write it again. Second y minus first y over second x minus the first x. And when we were doing this in class, I said it's kind of nice if you label these ahead of time, then you just plug and chug. So this is my first x, this is my first y, this is my second x, this is my second y. And now I'm ready to plug into the formula. So second y, 4, minus from the formula, my first y, 0. So second y minus first y, 4 minus 0. Then my second x is 0 minus my first x, which is negative 2. And remember, when we have a double negative, we always make that positive right away. That should be your first step. So there was a minus in the formula, plus x1 was negative. So that leaves us with m equals 4 minus 0 is 4, over 0 plus 2 is 2. And when we were doing slope a couple pages ago, we said it's a fraction, and just like any other fraction, it does need to be simplified. So our simplified answer, 4 divided by 2, is 2. And remember, you can also write it as 2 over 1, because slope is rise over run, so 2 over 1 or 2 is fine. If I was graphing it, I'd definitely make it 2 over 1, but since we're just finding the slope, 2's fine. So 4 divided by 2 is 2. So there's our review of finding x-intercepts, finding y-intercepts, and finding the slope. Now we're going to solve for y. So we take the same equation, and we did this several times on the last page, so you should be really good at it by now. So solve for y means get y all alone, everything else on the other side. So since we're crossing the equal sign, we do have to do the opposite. So plus 2x plus 2x. And remember how when we were doing this in the last section, we said don't put the 2x under the forks. You don't want to accidentally add those. You cannot, because they are not like terms. So these cancel. That's the whole reason we did it. And then we also learned on the last page to change the order on these, because we want it to look like y equals mx plus b, so it's ready to graph. So the 2x is positive and the 4 is positive. So now we can easily see the slope is 2. Boom, that's what we said there. And the y-intercept, this is a y-intercept, is 0, 4. Boom, we just verified that. So isn't that cool? So by solving for y, we can verify answers that were found differently, but they should always be the same. So this is a slope 2. The y-intercept always has x0, so it's 0, 4. There it is. Okay, the next thing we learned about slope was that we can find it by counting. So I always tell students this really should not be there. So let's go ahead and cross it out and pretend it's not there, because you could actually find the answer from that. I would never give you the answer in the problem. So on the test, it just says find the slope. So it doesn't say by counting, but we learned that whenever we have a graph, rather than use the formula y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, do you all remember we learned to use rise over run? If you look back a couple pages in this note packet, you'll see it. So m equals rise over run. So the other thing we learned when we were doing this method is that you always start from the left-hand point and you travel to the right-hand point, just like you read a book from left to right. So this is my starting point. This is my ending point. So I need to count the lines. First is rise. So that means I'm going to go down 1, 2, 3, 4. So that would be down 4. And remember how we learned when the line falls from left to right, the slope should be negative. And because we went down 4, it is in fact negative. Then we run. So from the point we left off, we run to that point. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I went down 4 over 6. And so that would leave me with a slope of negative 4, 6. But just like any other fraction, I do have to simplify for my final answer. You would not get full credit for that. So to simplify, we find something common. These are both divisible by 2. So we can divide both by 2 and we get m equals negative 2 over 3. And remember how when we did the first one like this, I said you could also, if you had extra time on a test, go back and write the coordinates of these 2 points, make 2 ordered pairs and find it that way. But students make a lot more errors on that method because they'll forget a negative sign or they'll subtract wrong. So this is really the best method when you're using a graph, but you can check it using the 2-point method that we did up here. So that's a review of finding slope when we're given a graph. Start with the left-hand point, travel to the right-hand point. We do our rise first, our run second. And when our rise is going down, we write negative. If our rise was going up, we'd write a positive. Slope-intercept form, that was at the top of the last page, I believe. Probably the most used formula in this class. Y equals mx plus b. So its name tells you what it gives us. It gives us a slope, and it gives us the y-intercept. So let's just write that there. M is the slope, just to remind ourselves. And 0, b. So b is the y-coordinate. If it's a y-intercept, x must be 0, is the y-intercept. Okay, so this next set is just going a step further than what we've already done. So write the equation of a slope with -5 and a y-intercept of 0, 4. So the minute I see equation, this is what I think. Oh, y equals mx plus b. They want me to write an equation and input the numbers they've given me. We'll take a look at what they've given me. Slope is -5. So that means in place of m, I need to put -5. The y-intercept, x is always 0, is 4. So I need to put 4 here in b, because we just said that b was the y-coordinate of the y-intercept. So my answer for this will be y equals -5x plus 4. And we always leave our x and y in the problem. And there's our answer. So this would be a good time for you to shut off the camera and try the next one on your own before I do it with you. So again, it says write the equation. So the minute I see that, I think y equals mx plus b. This one, the slope is 1/2. And the y-intercept, x is always 0. So b is -3. So we get y equals 1/2 x minus 3. Sorry about the snoring in the background. I forgot to shut my office door and my dog snores a lot. Excuse me for that. It's not me, I promise. So y equals 1/2 x minus 3. So no work involved. You just have to know where to plug everything in. And this is a review of what we did at the top of page 2, the last page. We're finding the slope. And remember, to find the slope of an equation, you have to solve for y, because I can't tell what the slope is until I've solved for y. So in this first one, see how y is already alone? So I can go right here and go, oh, this is y equals mx plus b. So my m is here, and my b is here. So let's go ahead, rather than just find the slope, let's find the slope and the y-intercept. So the slope would be m equals 2. And don't include the x. X is not the slope. What's in front of the x is a slope. And the y-intercept, we know as a point. X is always 0, and then we pull this. And pull its sign as well. So don't just pull the 3. It's -3. Okay, so I just extended these directions. So find the slope and y-intercept. Because whenever you need one, you usually need the other. So we'll practice both. Okay, the next equation is not solved for y. So then in my head, I think, well, I have to have y alone before I can read the information from it. So do the opposite to get y alone, which means divide every single term by 5. So I get y equals 3/5 x plus 2. So my slope